Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you for attending this meeting of Cabinet. Whilst the meeting is open to the public, it is being recorded and broadcast live on the County Council's website and will be available for repeat viewing. It may also be recorded and filmed by the press and public. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room whilst the meeting is taking place, so must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted elsewhere in the building at any time. Also, we're not expecting a fire drill, but in the event there is a fire alarm, please vacate the by the main reception or via the emergency exits across the hall. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go straight on. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got apologies from Councillor North.
Okay, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Does any member have a disclosure or pecuniary interest or personal interest in any item on the agenda? I think that's a no, then that's none. Okay, thank you very much. Right, agenda item 3, confirmation of the minutes held on the 19th of July. Any comments on the minutes you'd like to make, or are we happy to approve them as set out? Somebody say yes. That would be really helpful for a moment like that. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris approves the minutes. Not all on her own, I have to say, but thank you very much. Okay. Right, Chairman's announcement. So agenda item 4. First of all, really pleased to announce that many congratulations to Hampshire's Executive Member for Performance, Human Resources and Inclusion and Diversity, Councillor Kirsty North, on the birth of her son Edward on Monday the 3rd of October. So on behalf of the Cabinet and Hampshire County Council, I would like to send our very best wishes to the whole family, Kirsty, Edward, Phil and Eleanor, and hope they are enjoying this special time together. So I'm all really pleased and support them in that and congratulate them as well. I'm sure many of you have already spoken to them. So move on to awards. So congratulations to the County Council's Fostering Hampshire Children's Team, whose You Can Foster campaign was the gold winner in the public sector campaign category at the Chartered Institute for Public Relations Regional Pride Awards. The You Can Foster campaign, which ran last winter, achieved a 300% increase in inquiries about fostering in Hampshire, which has easily surpassed its target. So that's absolutely fantastic news. It's an outstanding achievement, and the Gold Award is well-deserved recognition for everyone who played their part putting together this brilliant campaign. So well done to the team. Congratulations also go to the County Council's Independent Futures team, who have been shortlisted in the Team of the Year Adult Services category in the Social Worker of the Year Awards. Being shortlisted for this award is an excellent achievement and highlights the fantastic work the team does to help young people with their transition into adulthood and independent living. The winners will be announced on the 4th of November, so really good luck to the Independent Futures team and well done again for this being nominated. Fantastic news. The month of October is also Black History Month, which is an opportunity to honour and recognise the accomplishments of Black Britons throughout the UK's history. This year's Black History Month is focused on time for change, action, not words, which seeks to move the national conversation on from raising awareness about racial inequality to taking actions to counter it. Hampshire County Council's BME Staff Network has organised a Black History Month programme with advice on the actions everyone can take to be an effective ally to Black people. I would like to thank the BME Staff Network for putting the programme together and encourage all staff to get involved. Also, I would like to highlight that today is World Menopause Day. World Menopause Day takes place every year on the 18th of October and falls within the World Menopause Month of October, both of which aim to raise awareness of the menopause and the support options available for women who are experiencing it. I encourage officers to read the Council's guidance on supporting employees with the menopause, take part in sessions run by the Council's Women's Group and Inclusion, Diversity and Wellbeing team, and join the staff-led Menopause Matters Yammer Group, Solent Mine ran a session on the menopause and mental health this morning, and further sessions will be run for staff who weren't able to attend today. Thank you to everyone involved in organising these important resources. I would also just like to pay a special tribute to the MP for Romsey and Southampton North, Caroline Notes, who is a tremendous champion for women undergoing menopause and campaigns tirelessly for the better support in the workplace. And Caroline has been doing a fantastic job with that. And we actually, with Councillor Ross, met her recently, and she was informing us of some of the work that she had been doing. So that's the end of my chairman's announcements. So we move on to agenda item 5, deputations. As I understand, there are no deputations today. Thank you very much. We'll now move straight on to agenda item 6, driving towards economic strength. And I think the Chief Executive, Caroline Williamson, is going to present the report. Caroline, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. And this is your regular comprehensive report, now focusing upon driving towards economic strength. Gary Westbrook, Assistant Chief Executive, will present the report alongside me, and in particular, he will take any tricky questions on the county deal and the investment zone expression of interest that we've just submitted. In terms of the report, there's a lot in it as usual. Hopefully you find it really beneficial in keeping up to date with the economic circumstances. Paragraphs 7 to 13 outline the current economic challenges and our response to those, followed by paragraphs 33 to 136, which gives you an economic update and the challenges facing Hampshire's economy. So we start with the national picture and then we bring that down to the Hampshire context. We then move on at paras 137 to 142 to provide an update on our approach to progressing towards the integration of the local enterprise partnerships. And then we move into paras 143 to 158, which is updating on progress and next steps regarding the Pan-Hampshire County deal. And the prospectus is attached to the papers at Appendix 2 to this report. And then finally, in addition, we have also submitted an investment zone expression of interest. You all received an update on that from the leader on Friday, and that interest has been lodged with government and following a very collaborative approach with our districts and boroughs across Hampshire to look at how best to position that bid with the greatest chance of success. So we will await to see government's consideration of that submission. Leader, I wasn't going to say anything else in particular, but happy to move on to any questions or comments from Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, we'll take questions. I just wanted to sort of say a huge report, an extensive report, and outlining in terms of those economic challenges first that we're all aware of. It's really good to see them sort of led out as they are. And I can't stress enough the amount of work that has been done by members to a degree, but mostly by officers in supporting the county deal. And the progress that we have made over the last couple of months has been significant. And also, on top of that, in terms of work with the investment zones as well. So it has been an extraordinarily busy time. But I'll open it up to questions from members. Councillor Heron.
Yeah, thank you. Hampshire is a large county. When you put the 3 unitaries that we traditionally think of being with the Hampshire family, and then another unitary with BCP, 2 national parks, geography is going to be a real challenge with a county deal. So what is the government's position on this? Now, is there anything from the first wave of deals that we can pick up that's a lesson for us?
Thank you, Councillor. Gary, do you want to lead us through some of what we're seeing coming out of the wave ones around geography and how the fit for our geography makes sense? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Councillor Heron. You're absolutely right that Hampshire is a large and diverse place. It makes up about 4% of the UK's economy. There's about £80 billion of GDP there and about, once you extend it, as you've said, to the unitaries, a population of just shy of 2.5 million people. But it's an area that hangs together as a socio-economic region, and you'll see in the papers, one thing we've done as part of the prospectus is demonstrate what's called a functional economic market assessment, which really demonstrates that the vast proportion of the people within that economic area are living there, they're working there, they're socialising there, they're moving house there. So it really hangs together as a coherent economic region. But that's notwithstanding some really important, as you've mentioned, subgeographies within that in terms of some really important economic corridors along the south coast, and also some really important clusters around defence, around the military, and around those economic corridors facing towards the north of the county and towards our neighbours in Surrey and London around the A3 and M3 corridors. From a government perspective, the scale is absolutely paramount in terms of their thinking, in terms of the legislation that's currently going through Parliament at the moment as part of the White Paper. They've set a de minimis of 500,000 in terms of population, so they're not looking at small-scale deals. And then alongside that, what they've said is you can't have 2 or more combined authorities across a single county area. So there's no appetite or ambition across government to start subdividing counties into smaller economic regions. And to be fair, that's then really held true in terms of the emerging Wave 1 deals that we've started to see emerging. If you take the East Midlands deal, which is one of those early Wave 1 deals that has made significant progress, that's across a significant geographic scale, so 2 county authorities and 2 significant cities in terms of Nottingham and Derby. And so really reinforcing that point that they're looking at large economic regions rather than small economic subgeographies.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks very much. And I think it does explain a bit in terms of the scale and the size that we operate at, doesn't it? So I think that probably answers your question. Councillor Oppenheimer, and then I'll come to...
Thank you, Leader. Just following on from Councillor Heron's question about the geography, I wanted to ask about what we're learning from Wave 1 in terms of governance. Does it seem that the government is sticking to the 3 levels it set out in its white paper, or are there any subtle differences emerging that you can detect, Gary? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Oppenheimer. I mean, I think what we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months is a real dispelling of that initial myth that devolution is about local government reorganisation. So what it's not about is creating new unitary authorities, as we've seen in areas like Wiltshire or Cornwall or more recently over in Buckinghamshire. But what it is about is that devolution of funding and powers from central government down to a local level under the governance of combined authorities. And then, as you said, those combined authorities and the powers of those combined authorities has then been set out in the white paper framework in terms of level 1, level 2 and level 3. Level 1, you don't get very much, and it's actually the kind of stuff you could be doing together, working collaboratively at the moment anyway. Level 2, there's some more funding and powers. And then level 3, you get the most in terms of new investment, new funding, and significant devolution of new powers. And what we've kind of seen emerging as part of that is government have absolutely stuck true as part of those initial negotiations in terms of holding true to those 3 levels, and in particular that requirement at level 3 that if you are going for a level 3 deal, you need to seriously consider a directly elected leader or a directly elected mayor model.
Thanks, Gary. And I think a really important question about the future and certainly those discussions, what we'll be having over the coming months, hopefully. Councillor Warwick.
Yes, thank you, Leader. You mentioned the economic challenges we're all facing at the moment, and I just wondered, Gary, if you could perhaps explain how the county deal might help support us in those sort of economic troubling times that we're all facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. Yeah, it's a very opportune question in terms of the policy and legislation is almost 18 months old, and the world's moved on significantly since that. I think in terms of the economic focus, there's obviously the here and now, but also members would have heard over the summer we presented our economic strategy for Hampshire and that wider economic ambition to 2050, and how important a positive and prosperous economy is in terms of shaping our 2050 ambition for Hampshire and the area itself. In terms of the county deal, devolution is going to be one of those key policy mechanisms from government in terms of enabling local determination and local growth within our areas, within our overall control, to really be then a key mechanism to drive that economic prosperity, whether it be around investment, whether it's a strategic focus around training and skills and aligning that with our employers, both in terms of the skills they need today, but the skills they need in terms of that changing economy over the medium term. And then there's a really important dynamic in terms of sustainable growth, and you'll see throughout the prospectus there's that wider emphasis in terms of aligning our economic ambition with our green space and our commitments around net environmental gain and carbon reduction, and making sure that we navigate that really appropriately towards that economic ambition to 2050.
Thank you very much, Gary. Is there any further questions from other members? Okay. I just want to say, also, first of all, thank you to Carolyn, Chief Executive, and the entire corporate management team that have been working very hard on this. It has been a tremendous amount of work over a fairly short period of time recently. We've had lots of discussions at an officer level as well, that you have, and also with our districts and borough colleagues, and with the unitaries and also the Isle of Wight, and of course including the BCP, who was mentioned in the prospectus. And I think it's important to say that the prospectus is what it is. It's a starting point to go forward for a discussion to see what a potential deal could be. And I think most people now understand that the world has changed, we're in a different place, and now is the time to be sitting down and having those discussions. So I'm really pleased that the progress we've made. Clearly, for obvious reasons, we paused this for a time being until things had settled down, hopefully, in central government. But now we're in a place where we can go forward, have those discussions, and see where we go from there in terms of working with our colleagues as well. So thank you very much to all the team and all the members that have helped with that as well. So on that note, if there aren't any further questions, I look forward to support in terms of the recommendations on page 27. I take support. That's great. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so we will now move on to agenda item 7, the draft Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, and I think Stuart Jarvis is going to present the report. Will you settle, Stuart? Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'll briefly introduce the report. I know that Cabinet have been briefed on the content of this, and there's already been some work done with you, so you're kind of familiar with the broad details. Essentially, the report before you today seeks authority to begin the first stage of consultation on updating the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. The reason for doing an update to the plan is partly to catch up with sort of national changes technically in national planning policy framework, and partly to sort of reflect changes on the ground in Hampshire since the original plan was approved. And members approved the development plan scheme, which sets out the programme for changing the local plan in July of this year. The purpose in seeking to go ahead today really is to continue progress on that review and start the first significant public consultation. Chairman, I should draw attention to the fact that the timetable that we originally approved in July envisaged the consultation would end in December, but we are planning to run that consultation till the end of January now in order to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for the good people of Hampshire to have their say on the proposals, and with the sort of interruption of Christmas and New Year and everything, it felt appropriate to do that. I'm confident that my team will be able to catch up with the timetable at later stages, so the end of the programme won't move. It's just that we'll take a bit more time on the consultation. The plan, as I say, the changes really fall into two categories. It's largely a technical sort of catching up exercise, partly to do with national planning policy framework and national guidance, partly to do with the fact that things have changed on the ground, and so we need to update the latest planning position on things like mineral sites and so on, because quite a lot has happened since the plan was originally approved. There are also some changes that reflect the County Council's 2050 position, and that was outlined in the last item. But again, there's a stronger emphasis on climate change in the emerging plan vision and policies. It reflects sort of contemporary issues which have arisen. Water quality has become a big issue nationally, and Hampshire's no exception to that. And the plan now includes a proposal for a specific policy on water quality to be taken into account in development proposals, which I'm sure members will welcome, but obviously that's something that we'll be testing with public consultation. The plan also contains updated policy on the minerals aggregate provision, and the good news I think on that one generally is that we're looking for lower targets for aggregate provision in the future than in the current plan, and that just reflects the latest demand forecasts and sales figures and so on. The plan also contains some technical changes to a number of policies, for example, the safeguarding of wharves and that, where it excludes wharves that aren't explicitly used for aggregate provision. So again, it's just a simplification and a tidying up exercise. In terms of waste, again, the policies are largely technical. The plan's updated to reflect the latest information on arisings and the latest waste forecasts. And as I'm sure members are aware, of course, the difference between our role as a waste planning authority and a waste disposal authority is that as waste planning authority, we're responsible for making provision for all waste arising in Hampshire and how it should be managed. As the waste disposal authority, we're responsible for the disposal of municipal waste. And that's a distinction which I know members are aware of, but again, that's something that often comes up in consultations on these type of exercises. And this plan, therefore, is all about the whole of waste arisings in Hampshire. And of course, it's done in partnership with a number of other authorities, the 2 cities and the 2 national park authorities. So it's also looking at that slightly wider area. The plan also includes, for the first time, strategic waste allocations, and again that's something that we're going to look through, but this is all about safeguarding that ability to deliver the infrastructure, particularly for supporting recycling and waste management, which anticipates the government's changes in national waste and recycling policy, which are currently going through Parliament, some of which have already been enacted in the Environment Bill or the Environment Act, and we're now waiting for some of the secondary legislation around some of those things. And that's basically the plan content, Chairman. The next step, subject to approval by the Cabinet, of course, would be to start the Regulation 18 consultation. And as I said at the outset, that's a 12-week consultation proposed, which would take us through to the end of January next year. And then I'm fairly confident that my team, working with our colleagues in partner authorities, will then be able to re-catch up with the timetable, because there was some reasonably generous provision in there for doing work, collating the outcomes of that before we proceed to the next stage, which is the Regulation 19 submission, when the plan begins to kind of take more form. At this stage, the current minerals and waste plan would take precedent in any planning where there's any difference in terms of the planning status, but as the plan goes further through the process, it has greater weight in planning decision making as an emerging development plan, but it doesn't really have much weight until it's emerged, at least through the Regulation 18 stage, which is what we're about to embark on, Chairman. That's all I was going to say by way of introduction.
Stuart, thank you very much and appreciate that. When you look at this in terms of, you look at a partial update, in actual fact, when you look at the amount of work that's gone into it and the size of the document as well, I realise is, so I will just say at this moment, thank you to you and the team for that. Because as I say, when you read it as a partial update, it seems like it's only a partial, a small amount of work, but it's a huge amount of work. And interesting to note for all members and everybody else as well, that it's done in partnership with working with our colleagues and other authorities as well. So that can make the challenges sometimes a little bit harder as well. Councillor Heron, would like to comment.
Thank you, Leader. First, to follow up on the point you've just made, this is not our plan. There are 5 authorities that are covered by this, so ourselves, Portsmouth, Southampton, and the 2 national park authorities who are equally minerals and waste planning authorities. So this is a plan for all of us, albeit because of their geographies and their policies. There's not an awful lot of minerals excavation opportunity in Portsmouth and Southampton, so it is obviously, but there is waste issues particularly, so I think it is quite important. The other one I just want to mention is, yes, this is partial, yes, this is, but there will be some communities in our county who are of particular interest to this. There always is when there is a plan and we have allocations of sites in them, and it will be of significant interest to some of those communities. So I think the key point to say here is this is the beginning of the process. This is a consultation on a draft plan. Those looking at the timetable will see that after the consultation, which is Director has said extends to the end of January, there is also in here a very long period thereafter where we have to evaluate and look at that consultation response. The answer is very rarely does a draft plan come out the other end at Regulation 19 in exactly the same form as it went in. And to be honest, as much as it would be great to think we picked everything up, I don't think it would be realistic. I think if a plan did come out exactly the same, I think it would show that you hadn't engaged properly with those consultation responses. So I think the key point I want to make here is, please, particularly those communities or sectors that are particularly interested, please do make sure that they respond in the consultation period. Please do respond in the period so we have the full time to evaluate the responses. And secondly here, and I know that this is inevitable with consultations, that it is those who are unhappy with something who respond. But please, a plea out to people, if there are things in here that you agree with, particularly around some of our work around sustainability, water, please do write in and agree with us as well, because it does give a more balanced consultation if those who support various elements come in and make their voices heard, rather than just think because it's in here, that's clearly what we think, because it isn't. This is far from a discussion document. This is us saying, this is our first thought. What do you think? If you don't agree or do agree, what is your evidence for agreeing and not agreeing? But thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Edward. Stuart, would you like to come back on any of that? I think I see a lot of nodding, so I assume you agree with that. But I think the important thing is about taking a more strategic sort of overview of any consultation is important. Stuart?
I absolutely agree with the points that Councillor Heron made. I think it is particularly important that people articulate support for the plan as well, because otherwise when it comes back to members, it'll be the weight of consultation was that these are all the things people didn't like, and therefore there is a danger that the plan may be changed to reflect that view rather than perhaps the silent majority that might support lots of what's in the plan. So I absolutely endorse that point. And yes, Chairman, in my kind of getting quite long professional experience now, I've never seen a draft plan emerge unscathed at the other end of the process.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Is there any other questions? Councillor Warwick.
Yes, if I may, Chairman. Stuart, can you talk us about the communication plan for this plan, because it's a huge document and I guess not every member of the public will necessarily want to read it. Do you have a sort of method, presumably you have some statutory consultees you would go to, but in terms of the public and the parishes, do you guide them through that process or do you just send them a link? How does that work?
We certainly have statutory consultees, and as you can imagine, Councillor Warwick, the legislation also prescribes quite a lot about how one has to conduct a planning formal consultation. But yes, I think we're very open-minded about trying to guide and help people through the process. I agree the document is massive. I haven't printed it off myself, as Cabinet Member for Climate Change, I'm sure, would be very pleased to hear. It is a very big document. The ability to kind of look at bits of it on the web will help with that. But yes, I think we're very open, and we do try to be imaginative about how we sort of it's really about how we draw people's attention to the document, and I think we're open to that, and there's obviously a very important role for members to play in that, as well as kind of community leaders in their local patch to make sure that's, and my officers are there to try and support that.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Foster. Steve, you had a question.
Thank you, Leader. I was really encouraged to hear both Councillor Heron and Mr Jarvis talking about engagement with communities, parishes, districts, etc., because it is critical, and the reference to those that support it, as well as those that might be considered NIMBYs, many will object to anything that affects their own area, but won't support other things, maybe outside their area, let alone within. And I do think it's important to do that. As part of the briefing, to make sure we bring this to their attention, is it possible for us to consider maybe doing some video briefings that are very much oriented towards the resident in the street, so they don't have to read the full document unless there's something that's in there, but really making it in bite-sized chunks that do highlight both things that might be concerns to them, but also the benefits that this will bring to them.
So I think we can see that Councillor Foster had some social media training yesterday and about video, so I think I'm sure that's something we can look at. Stuart?
Yes, I'll sort of do some work with my communications colleagues and see what we can do. Absolutely sympathetic to that. And I think, you know, we're at risk of being boring about this. If you look at what we did on Hampshire 2050, we did manage to get out there by being a bit more creative about the way we used and worked with the media to get that message across. So I would hope that we can do some of that stuff, and I will certainly absolutely agree that that's where we want to get to. And the Cabinet report's not a bad start as a bite-sized version of the plan.
That's really good. Thank you, Stuart, and thanks, Councillor Foster, for the question. I think it is a way. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work, as you know, in terms with the comms teams about how we communicate, and I think we've made a good deal of progress working with them about how we react with the public and how we get that message out. I think all for the benefit for all of us and for the whole of Hampshire, so thank you for that. Stuart, thank you very much, and once again, please take back our thanks to the whole team that have done all the work on this as well. So looking at the recommendations on page 107, happy to accept and support the recommendations. That's great. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Stuart. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 8, deputations to the Pension Fund panel. And I understand the monitoring officer, Barbara Beardwell, is going to present the report, or is it not? No, it isn't. That's why you looked surprised at me, Barbara, like that. I'm sorry. Rob did tell me, but I'm just reading what's on my paper. Rob.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, members. Hopefully a very straightforward report for you. So at the moment, if under the current constitution, if you want to make a deputation to a county council meeting, you have to be a resident of the administrative area of Hampshire. That means if you're a member of the local government pension scheme in Hampshire, but you happen to live in Dorset, for example, you can't make a deputation to the pension fund panel and board. So what this report suggests and recommends to you is that we change the constitution to allow members of the Hampshire local government pension scheme to make deputations to the pension fund panel and board. That's it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rob. So really just in terms of process as an update then. So is there any questions from members? Besides, there's not. Okay, all right, thank you very much. So thanks, Rob. So we're happy to accept the recommendations as set out on page 121. That's great, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 9, corporate risk management. And I think Patrick Blogg, you're presenting the paper. Thank you. And Izzy.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Good morning, members. Can I just introduce, first of all, Izzy Felton, my colleague who works very closely with me on risk management. And I'm just going to say a few words of introduction before Izzy takes us through some of the detail of the paper in front of you. I took over responsibility for risk management in May of last year, and there were 3 things which were quite important to me in considering how we do risk management. One is that we have robust processes. The second is that we have a thread that runs through the governance of risk management. And finally, that we have a culture of risk management within the organisation. So what you'll see in the paper in front of you is really a summary of the detailed risk management arrangements that we have in place. It covers the detail of the processes and the governance that we have which run through the organisation in risk management terms. And I think importantly, it's that thread that runs through those governance arrangements, right through from services up through department management teams into CMT through the Risk Management Board and onto members. But importantly for me, it's less about the process side once the process is in place, but it's much more about the culture of how we do risk management and embedding that culture within the organisation such that it runs through everything that we do. So you'll see within finally the paper, encapsulated in that is the Risk Management Strategy Appendix A, which really brings all of those points together. But if I may, I'll hand over to Izzy, who's just going to take us through the key points of the paper, and then happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. So the report sets out the risk management arrangements and framework that we have in place across the County Council. And sitting within this is the risk management strategy for 2022 to 2025. And this is a longer-term strategy which has been developed this year by the Corporate Risk Management Board. And it's the board's responsibility to oversee and drive forward those strategy aims. The strategy you'll see in the report is set out in Appendix A. So the report also talks through those systems of governance and processes and guidance that sit within that risk framework. And this is used across the organisation, and actually it's very well in place now, and it's certainly become more mature within the last 2 years. So what we see now is we've actually got a very strong risk framework that really helps us to manage, to identify and monitor risks well. And in particular, there was an audit earlier this year by the Southern Internal Audit Partnership, which certainly showed how we'd improved on managing risk as an organisation. Also set out in the report in paragraphs, between paragraphs 11 and 20, and sitting within this framework are those governance and reporting structures that you'll see set out in Appendix C. And this allows that two-way thread of information, as well as that visibility at senior level too. As part of the governance and reporting, there's regular discussions that happen within the departmental management teams, and this is where they look at their department risk registers and look at their risk profiles, so looking at their new and current and emerging risks, potentially emerging risks. The report also talks through makes reference to the Corporate Risk Management Board and how key they are to overseeing that risk management framework to make sure that it remains strong and to drive forward that risk strategy. It's a very well-established group. There's senior representation from across departments, and there's also input from key risk areas, such as health and safety, information governance, and resilience management. The board recognise that risks are often dynamic and changing, so they meet every 2 months to make sure that they're discussing current and potential emerging risks, and then there's that onwards reporting to the corporate management team on a regular basis, so there's that oversight and approval at senior level. And this also includes that annual reporting to the Audit Committee for that scrutiny and challenge and assurance about our County Council risk management arrangements. Also, towards the end of the report, it sets out those continuous improvement between paragraphs 21 to 26. So this is looking at our risk management systems and approaches, some of which are already well in place, such as the better central risk register that we have, and also more recently the new levels of effectiveness of risk controls. And all of this is very much driven forward by the Corporate Risk Management Board throughout the departments and across the organisation. There's also improvements currently in development, and what we're looking at now is how we can continue to raise awareness and learning on risk more widely for staff across the organisation, from those who manage projects to programmes to the wider sort of strategic risks, so we can help drive forward a more positive culture. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Izzy, thank you very much. And Patrick. Councillor Foster, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Leader. Patrick, Izzy, thank you for the report. I would like to make people aware of the phenomenal amount of work that has gone into this. As Mr. Blogg said, taking over responsibility just 17 months ago and putting in place the framework and the actions that we've had over that time with a very lean team, I think is phenomenal, and praise to yourselves and all those who were involved in that, and the support from the management team, from the CMT in particular. The way that the RMB, Risk Management Board, and the management team, CMT, are working together and having oversight, coupled with the oversight of the Audit Committee, I think is excellent governance that's borne out by the report, and all credit to all those involved.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foster. Is there any further questions from other members? Councillor Oppenheimer.
Chairman, can I just check, please? Are we allowed at this point to ask specific questions about the risks on the risk register table, or are we waiting to go into exempt session before we do that?
Yeah, we'd wait till we go into an exempt session, as I understand. Yeah. Any further questions from any members? No? Well, just to enforce what Councillor Foster has said, huge piece of work, so thank you very much to both of you for doing that. I think that's something that's very easy from our point of view to just assume that it just all gets done, but it's just really, really important that it is, and we need to know that we are sort of effectively protected from that point of view. So for no further question, thank you both very much for presenting. Thanks, Izzy, as well. First time, I think, yeah. Okay, so are we happy to accept the recommendations as set out on page 137? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we now go to agenda item 10, but I am going to make a recommendation that to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following item of business, as it is likely in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings that if members of the public were present during this item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within para 3 of Part 1 of the Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and further that in all the circumstances of the cases, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the exempt report. The intention to hold part of the Cabinet meeting in private was notified on the County Council's website on the 13th of September 2022 in accordance with Para 3, Chapter 4 of the Constitution, and no representations regarding this intention have been received. Can I take it that the rest of the members are happy that we do this? Okay, that's great, thank you. So I now will ask for the recording to be stopped. Thank you very much. And can you please notify me when that has been? And then